Procrastination is not a problem with time management. It's a problem with emotion management. Just like everyone else, I have this problem, and I use 3 methods to solve it. The first 2 methods are obvious and commonplace. The trick is to design them so that you actually use them. The third method, motivation harvesting, this is a term that I invented. And of the 3, this one really is the most powerful, the most effective in preventing procrastination, at least for me. This video is the 8th in a series of videos designed for college students about how to succeed in college. But this particular topic, procrastination, applies to almost everyone. The purpose of this video is to explain everything that I've just said. Like, what exactly does it mean for procrastination to be an emotion management problem? What is that? And what exactly are these methods for combating procrastination, and how exactly do you implement them? That's what I'm going to do, so let's get started. I begin with the tale of a video game. In the summer of 1996, the Nintendo Corporation released a new video game console with a 64-bit processing unit. The handheld controller for the Nintendo 64 console had 3 things. The best game on N64 was a go-kart racing game called Mario Kart, and the best track to race on in that game was a colorful, psychedelic track floating in space called Rainbow Road. In my first year of college, there was a television with a Nintendo 64 in the common room of the dorm where I lived. And I remember the exact moment, 2 weeks into the semester. I had just finished a 9 a.m. class, and I was walking back to the dorm, and I realized I can't go back. If I enter that building, then I'm just gonna end up playing Mario Kart, and I'm not gonna get anything done for the rest of the day. So I stopped walking, I turned around, and I went to the library. And when I got to the library, I reserved a desk. They were called carrels, like a library carrel. There was just a desk in the library, and I was the only one who was allowed to sit there. I reserved that desk for 4 years, for the rest of my college career. And I would leave all of my textbooks and all of my notebooks on that desk in the library. I never brought those books into my dorm room. And I used that desk as a hub. And I would go there in between classes during the day. I would wake up, go to class, and then I would go to the library. And I would work for a few hours, and then go to my next class, and then go to lunch, and then go back to the library and work for another few hours, go to my last class or whatever. But I did not go back to that dorm during the day. This decision may have saved my college career. If you're one of those guys who, sits and plays Mario Kart in the common room all day, well then, what happens is that you're on Rainbow Road, and you have class in 3 minutes from now, but once you're on that Rainbow Road, you're not getting off. And so you skip class, and then you skip class again. And now you've skipped class a few times, and you've fallen way back in the material, and it's just too hard to catch up. And so then you flunk out. This happened to one of those guys who played Mario Kart in the common room. Dude flunked out. Today, I'm a professor here at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I still struggle with procrastination. And the insight that I've discovered that has helped me deal with my own procrastination or lack of motivation is the one that I said at the very beginning of this video, which is that procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotion management problem. When you procrastinate, it's not that you don't know how to allocate your time or how you should allocate your time. Of course, you should be working on this task now instead of scrolling around on the internet. The problem is that task, whatever it is, that thing that you've got to get done, for some reason, it is associated with some unpleasant emotion. Maybe it's fear. You're afraid of doing poorly on that assignment, or doing a bad job at that task, whatever it is, and actually working on the assignment forces you to confront the fact that you might not do well, and that's unpleasant. Or maybe it's just boredom. Of course you don't want to experience boredom. Boredom is bad. Okay, so whatever it is, there's some unpleasant emotions associated with the task that you are procrastinating doing. And so you need some methods, some techniques that you can use to overcome this fact. And I'm going to write them up again. These are the 3 that I use. This one is kind of easy, rewards. So what you do is you break the task up into little parts, and then at the end of each part, you get a reward. You set up a reward, chocolate or a break, or you get to scroll for 5 minutes or whatever, right? And what this does is it means that if you complete that portion of the task, not only do you get the unpleasant thing, which is the boredom, but you also get this pleasant thing, which is the candy or whatever. So then when you sort of like add the boredom and the candy together, it's not so bad, and you're able to get it done. That's rewards. You break the task up and you set up rewards along the way. Method number 2, temptation removal. You have to be serious about this one. If you're afraid to do this task, you're overcome with fear, and also there's right in front of you some tempting alternative, then you're forcing yourself to choose fear over something else, something pleasant and easy like scrolling on the internet or whatever. And if you pit these 2 tasks against one another, or these 2 options, then scrolling on the internet is always going to win. So you have to remove the temptation, right? That's what I was doing by not going back to the common room where there's the N64 with Mario Kart. You wouldn't realize that you have to do this if you thought that procrastination was a time management problem. If it was a time management problem, you just have to learn some, techniques for managing your time, like what to do in what order or whatever. But that's not the problem. The problem is your emotions, and so you have to remove temptations. I'm now in my 30s, and I'm a professor at a university. Here are the things that I do currently to remove temptation so I can get my own work done. The first thing is that I have browser blockers on all of my browsers. So my computer in my office and my cell phone, I have, a blocker. It's a piece of software that prevents me from going to fun websites. And I work in a barren room. Like usually I don't do my own research in my office because there's all sorts of stuff there. So I will go to the library amongst the students, or I will go to various secret places that I won't tell you about, where there's nothing, just a plain desk, no distractions. Whenever possible, I print things out. Because if you have a piece of paper and you're looking at a piece of paper and you have a pen, you can't just click somewhere on the paper to go to some more interesting thing. No, this is all you've got on the paper. So I print things out. And then I use this. This is my cell phone lockbox. I've shown this in a previous video, but the way it works is you take your phone, you put it in, you lock it for a certain amount of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then there's no way to get your phone out. You can swipe, there's like a hole here, so you can swipe to answer a call and put it on speakerphone if it's an emergency, but you can't get your phone out. There's no override in this thing. My phone is locked away. I literally lock my own cell phone in this box when I'm trying to get work done. And then I noticed this thing in the library. This is a phone charging station, but you could also use it as a phone lockbox. Like you leave your phone in there when you go into the library, even if your phone doesn't need to charge. The point of this method is to set yourself up for success. You're only human. I mean, have you ever even played Mario Kart? It's amazing. If every time you try to get work done, you have to resist the temptation to play Mario Kart, you're gonna lose. I made up this term, motivation harvesting, and now I'm going to explain what it means. When I was in graduate school, I had a work accountability group with 3 other graduate students. There were 4 of us, we were graduate students, and we would meet in an empty classroom. And we'd start by going around the room, and everyone declared what they were going to work on that day. And then we would work in silence in the same room for an hour. And then someone's, alarm would go off and we'd all take a break and use the restroom and chit-chat. We'd all say what we accomplished in the previous hour, and then we got back to work. We worked for another hour, and then the alarm went off again. We'd take another break, and we did this over and over again. This was very effective. We still do it. Now we're no longer graduate students. Most of us are professors at various universities around the country, but we gather in like a video conference, and we all make chit-chat at the beginning about our children and our lives and whatever, and then we declare what we're going to do and we get to work. And while we're working, we leave our cameras on, but our microphones are muted, and we work for an hour, and then after an hour, we all turn our microphones back on and say what we just accomplished and chat some more, and then turn our mics off and work for another hour. And we do this for 3 or 4 hours once a week. Why does this work, like this work accountability group? The fact that you go into a room with other people in this way, why exactly does this prevent procrastination or give you a very effective, consistent, motivational boost? I have a theory. You see, you are already motivated to impress people. What this work accountability group does is it takes the motivation that you already have to impress your friends, or at least to have them not think that you're like really lazy and unreliable. It takes your motivation to not, let them down, and it transfers that motivation over onto the task that you need to get done. Here's another thing that you could do that would work very similarly. Let's say you went into the library or whatever, or some common place where people are walking by, and there was a big projector screen there. And you plugged your laptop into that screen so that everyone who was walking by, strangers, could see what was on your screen. And then you got to work. So you're just working looking at your screen, but you know that whatever's on your screen, everyone can see it. Everyone can see what you're doing. This would prevent you from clicking around randomly on the internet. Why is that? Well, because if you're like me, you care about what other people think of you. You want them to think that you're not lazy and that you can get work done or whatever, and that you're not just, working for a few seconds and then clicking off and doing something else, right? So you want them to think that about you, and you take that want, you take that motivation that you already have to impress other people, right? And you set up a scenario where your screen is projected on the wall or whatever, and that scenario is a scenario where in order to impress other people, you have to do the thing that you need to get done, which is like, read your chemistry textbook or write your essay or whatever. This is what I mean by motivation harvesting. You take some motivation that you already have, like to impress people or to have them think highly of you or whatever. You take that motivation and you harvest it. You pull it out of that area. You set up a situation where now that motivation gets applied to this thing that you have to do otherwise. More examples of this same technique. Let's say that you're just laying in bed and you know that you should get up and bathe yourself and emerge into the world, but you're lacking the motivation. So here's what you do. You reach over for your phone and you send a message to your friends and you arrange to meet up with them in a few hours. If you show up to this event without having bathed, then they will smell you. So because you arranged for this get-together in 2 hours or whatever, your motivation not to have your peers think that you are filthy, that motivation gets applied to your current circumstance. Well, now this thing that you didn't want to do, you didn't have enough motivation to do it, which is get up out of bed and take a shower. Now you're motivated to do that thing because that's the only way to get this other thing that you want, which is for your friends not to think that you're a filthy creature. Another example, you have tryouts for the basketball team in 6 months. What you need to do for the next 6 months is practice playing basketball so you can make the basketball team in 6 months. But you're lacking the motivation. How are you going to do it? You set up a pickup basketball game every week for the next 6 months with people who you want to impress, people who you want to beat at the game of basketball. Well, you've agreed to play basketball at this time and at this place. And you don't want these people to think that you're irresponsible for not showing up, right? They will dislike you if you just flake on them and don't show up. So now you have to show up, but also you want them to think that you're good at basketball. You want to dunk on them. So now you have 1 week to practice to get to an acceptable level of basketball skill. And so you hustle all week long and then you play in the pickup game. But then there's another pickup game next week and you want to impress those people. So you practice the next week too. And you do this every week for 6 months. And then you were able to do this thing that you were otherwise struggling with motivation to do, which is consistently practice over the course of 6 months so that you can make the team, during tryouts. Okay, now an example that college professors all over the world use all the time. So there are conferences, like academic conferences. These are when faculty or academics, when we get together and we present our work, our research to each other. We need to publish papers. We need to write and publish papers. Well, some of these conferences that you present a paper at, you can apply to present a paper without the paper. All you need is like an extended abstract. That means like a 2-page summary of the paper. So what people do is they write the 2-page summary of the paper before they've ever written the paper. They send the 2-page summary off to the conference, and then the judges at the conference, who are other professors, other academics, they read the abstracts and they accept the papers. Okay, so they accepted your paper now. Oh, but the paper doesn't exist. You just wrote a 2-page summary of a paper that doesn't exist. Professors do this all the time. Well, now you don't want to embarrass yourself at the conference, so you've got to write the paper. And that's how you get the motivation to write that paper. You harness your pre-existing motivation not to embarrass yourself in front of other scholars. You have that motivation not to embarrass yourself, and you set up a situation. The situation is where you're now expected to present a paper that doesn't exist. You harness that motivation and apply it to the case so that now you have to write the paper. That's motivation harvesting. Faculty use this all the time. Another classic strategy that has existed for decades, maybe centuries, maybe millennia, and that really, it turns out, I only realized later, it really is a form of motivation harvesting, is sitting at the front of the class. You show up to a class or a lecture and you're tired and you're worried you're going to zone out or just altogether fall asleep. So what you do is you decide to sit all the way in the front. Why does that work? Well, it works because you have a pre-existing motivation to not embarrass yourself by falling asleep, right? Because if you're in the front and you fall asleep, well, then the person giving the lecture will notice that and will hate you. And other people will see you because you're in front of them. You're in their line of sight. So you set up a situation by walking to the front of the room and sitting down there, where now your motivation not to embarrass yourself turns into motivation not to fall asleep. So now you have extra motivation not to fall asleep, and you're able, hopefully, to stay awake during that lecture. That is a classic move, sitting at the front of the room when you're tired, and it's a version of motivation harvesting. Fundamentally, motivation harvesting is just a powerful way to deal with procrastination in a way that recognizes that it is an emotion management problem. You are managing your own psychology, your own desires, and you're setting up a situation so that you can do the thing when you lack the immediate desire to do it.